All right, so for this deep dive, you've sent us a story instead of the usual articles and papers,
Yeah.
right? And not just any story.
Right.
Book Theory Blue, UFOs, government conspiracies,
Yeah.
a main character who goes deep, deep, deep into some seriously out there theories about reality. Wild stuff.
It really is fascinating, how the story uses fiction, a fictional story, to explore those huge questions we all think about. How do we form beliefs? What shapes how we see the world, our reality? And is there more to things than we realize?
Right. Like, what's really going on? And our guide on this journey into all this is Rory. He's really fixated on UFOs,
Yeah.
convinced there's this huge cover-up happening.
Right.
And that leads him to something he calls paradigm theory. Have you ever noticed how two people can look at the same thing and see it totally differently?
Yeah, absolutely. That's paradigm theory, basically. We each have these frameworks in our minds, these filters, shaped by what we've lived through, what we believe. And those filters change how we understand information, how we experience the world around us. Think about a time when your own beliefs about something big really changed. What made you shift your thinking?
It's like that example in the story with the apples, right? 3 people looking at a table with apples on it.
Okay.
2 of them see 3 apples.
Right.
But the third person sees a 4th apple hidden behind something else. Different perspectives reveal a different reality. And that's where Rory's idea of unreality comes in.
It's like he's saying there's this narrative we all agree on. This unreality that tells us what's true, even if it's biased or incomplete. Have you ever felt pressure to think a certain way, maybe from social media or the news, even friends and family?
Oh, yeah. All the time. It's so easy to get stuck in those echo chambers.
Right.
So that could be what Rory calls blue beams, those negative forces trying to control what we believe.
Exactly. And he contrasts those with purple beams, which are like positivity, authenticity, those moments of real connection, empowerment. It's like he's saying, fight against being controlled and find those purple experiences.
And this is where it gets really interesting. Rory's convinced there's this entity, this Mr. Blue, who thrives on negativity and manipulates people.
Okay.
I know it sounds out there, but you don't have to buy into the literal Mr. Blue to see his point.
All right, you can think of it metaphorically. Have you ever felt manipulated, even controlled by information or systems, people trying to push you in a certain direction?
Oh, yeah.
Rory even compares it to a farm.
Okay.
Like, we're the livestock, completely unaware.
Okay, now that is a chilling thought. So how do we escape this metaphorical farm? Rory finds a lot of comfort in what he calls book theory, this idea that our lives are already written from start to finish, just like books.
It's an old idea, this whole free will versus determinism debate. If our lives are like books, who wrote them? God. Fate. And if our paths are already set, does that make us passive, or does it free us to embrace the story however it unfolds?
Those are some deep questions, and Rory really wrestles with those throughout the story, especially when his own life starts falling apart.
Exactly. He gets more and more paranoid, convinced he's being watched, his friend Teddy's in danger,
Right.
and his use of marijuana, even though it's presented casually,
Yeah.
makes you wonder just how clearly he's seeing things.
Right, like, is there really a Mr. Blue out there pulling the strings? Or is it all in his head? It's like, if you see a monster, is it real because you see it, or are you just seeing what your mind creates?
It all gets very blurry. What I get clear is that Rory feels this responsibility to warn people, to expose the blue beams, and encourage everyone to find their own purple beams.
So that's where his Book Theory Blue website and those t-shirt designs come in. He's using them to make people doubt, to question what they're being told.
It's a really interesting example of how fiction can be this powerful tool. Social commentary, even if it's disguised as a story about aliens and conspiracies. And speaking of conspiracies, Rory comes across this idea of Project Bluebeam.
And this is where it gets even wilder, right? For those who don't know, what is Project Bluebeam?
What's a real conspiracy theory? Claims there's this plan to stage a fake alien invasion or even a second coming using advanced technology. The idea is to create a mass illusion that everyone believes to manipulate them.
Wow. So we've got layers on layers here. A story about a guy obsessed with conspiracies who then finds a real-world conspiracy that totally plays into his beliefs. Almost too perfect.
And that's what makes Book Theory Blue so interesting. It mixes these crazy ideas with very real fears. Control, misinformation, the power of belief. It makes you question what you think is true and consider that maybe things aren't always what they seem.
It definitely gets you thinking.
Rory's journey, even if it seems extreme, forces us to ask ourselves, How do we handle a world where it's harder and harder to know what's real?
And maybe even more importantly, how do we hold on to our own sense of truth when the lines between reality and illusion get blurred?
It's like that whole Project Bluebeam thing hits him at such a crucial point,
Yeah.
Fresh out of the psych ward after a suicide attempt.
Mm-hmm.
You could see that as the ultimate blue beam, right? A complete break from reality.
Totally.
But instead of backing down, he goes all in. Like, facing that ultimate manipulation, at least what he sees as manipulation, just makes him more determined to spread his message.
To stay purple, right?
Exactly. He even calls it a kamikaze mission, this need to expose the truth as he sees it, to fight negativity with, well, radical positivity. It makes you think about how differently people deal with fear, with not knowing what's real.
Yeah, some people hide, some people lash out, and then you have people like Rory who get laser focused on getting their message out, even if it means everyone thinks they're the conspiracy theorists.
Right, and he's got this really specific idea about how this unreality, as he calls it, how it stays in control.
Oh.
He says it's insidious. It's constantly reinforcing the accepted narrative through the media, institutions, even just everyday conversations. It's like this invisible force field warping how we see things without us even realizing it.
It's like when we had that huge UFO congressional hearing.
Oh, right.
You'd think that would have been the biggest story, like, ever. Proof of aliens, maybe? But nothing, really. Barely made a blip.
And that just feeds right into his point about how unreality shuts down anyone who disagrees.
Mm-hmm.
You challenge what everyone's supposed to believe, you're a crackpot. Or, even worse, mentally ill.
Which is kind of ironic considering what Rory's going through, right? Makes you wonder how much of what we believe is really us and how much is just from this pressure. Are we really in control of our own thoughts, or are we just products of what's around us, shaped by everything we watch, everything we read? It's a scary thought. And that's where Rory's purple beams idea becomes even more important. It's not just being optimistic.
Right.
It's about actively pushing back against that manipulation, about listening to your gut, even when everything feels confusing.
So staying purple isn't just about positivity. It's about actually thinking for yourself.
Exactly. Critical thinking.
Right.
Questioning everything, getting different perspectives, not just taking things at face value.
Right.
He even says we have to doubt things that seem obviously true.
Wow.
Because those truths could be the base of a much bigger illusion.
That's a lot to unpack. So how do we shine our purple beams, as he puts it? He talks about just being kind, really connecting with people, being true to yourself even when it's hard. He seems to believe those little acts of defiance, those flickers of light, can push back against the darkness, help us break free from Mr. Blue or whatever's trying to control us.
It's a powerful message, even if you think some of Rory's ideas are out there. It's about taking control of your own thoughts, your own beliefs, your own actions, when the world's constantly telling you what to think, how to feel. But there's another part of this whole book theory thing I kind of want to dig into. Rory talks about God being the author, right, of our pre-written books. And that just opens up a whole other can of worms.
It really does. It's such a common idea, though, in so many religions and philosophies, this divine plan.
Yeah.
But it makes you question free will, doesn't it? If God wrote our stories, are we just characters acting out a script? Where's the choice in that?
And if we are characters in a story, what kind of story are we in? Comedy, tragedy, something in between?
Mm-hmm.
And if there is an author, what's the overall point?
I mean, that's a question humans have been asking forever.
Right.
And Book Theory Blue, as strange as it is, adds something new to that conversation.
It really makes you think, even if you don't agree with everything Rory says.
Which might be the whole point, right?
Right.
To get us thinking, get us questioning.
Yeah.
Maybe even shine a little more of that purple light when the world feels very blue.
It's funny. For someone so into these big, huge conspiracies, Rory has a pretty interesting way of thinking about how God created everything.
Oh, yeah?
He compares it to a writer using words to get an idea across.
Right, right.
It's a good comparison, actually. It shows how powerful language is, how our minds work. We don't need to see every little detail to get something.
Right.
A few good words can make you imagine a whole world. Like if I say beach, you picture it instantly, right? You don't need me to describe every grain of sand or anything. So Rory's saying maybe God works kind of the same way.
Wow.
That the universe, it's like this massively compressed idea. And our minds, our consciousness, that's what unpacks those ideas into reality, what we experience.
It makes you think, doesn't it? About that question we were talking about before. Does objective reality, like a reality that's the same for everyone, does it even exist? Or is everything just filtered through us, our own consciousness?
Makes your head spin a little, right? But that's what's so great about Book Theory Blue. It takes these huge, complicated ideas, but it grounds them in this character and his experiences, which are really relatable.
We see him struggling with paranoia,
Yeah.
trying to recover, dealing with his relationships. And through all that, he's challenging us to question what we see, what we believe about the world.
And to look for those purple moments,
Yeah.
those glimmers of hope, of connection, even in the rough times, even when he's in the psych ward, he's still trying to
purple up everything.
focus on kindness, being real.
It's a good reminder that even when we feel powerless, even when we doubt our own sanity, we still have a choice.
We do.
We could let the negativity win, or we could choose to shine our light, even if it seems small.
So as we're wrapping up this deep dive into Book Theory Blue, I'm curious, what really stuck with you from all this? What will you be thinking about later? Was it Rory's struggles with mental health, the big philosophical stuff, or that message of resisting the whole staying purple thing in a world that can feel, well, very blue?
Definitely something to think about.
Whatever it is, hopefully this deep dive gave you a new way of looking at things, something to think about. Maybe it made you question some of your own assumptions, or even just look for those purple beams in your own life. Because sometimes even the craziest stories can reveal something really true.
Absolutely. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do against the darkness is just choose to shine your own light.
Well said. Until next time, stay curious, keep those purple beams shining, and remember, reality might be a lot more flexible than we think.